So then, like partial years, when it comes to like these assets that are placed in service, because like they'll place these assets to the service like on various dates among the year. They're not going to be always placed on January 1st, which would be nice, but that isn't going to work long term. Like to always like have these assets put in service on January 1st. Maybe you plan out a date where it's like January 1st is the date to place an asset into service. Uh, but if an asset is not placed into service January 1st, as so pretty much it wouldn't be a full year because, like for example, if it was placed into service on February 1st, um, the calculations would be off. Like, I mean, you could say that's like a full year, but it's not. It's only 11 months out of a year that was actually in service. So, like, I'm not saying like that would be a lie, but you know, there's like conventions you could use. Um, like, there is a convention. Uh, you can say like, oh, you can use the half year convention. Like, if it's close enough to being half a year, then it can be like half year convention, for example. Like, it can be like, oh, if it was placed in service on July 3rd or like July 15th, for example. Um, the nearest fraction of that year, like if it really depends on like how exact you want this depreciation to be. Um, like at July 15th. Well, I mean that's a little far out, honestly. You would probably see it be more like June 15th. Um, at that point, you might be able to say like, yeah, instead of using the nearest fraction, instead to use the half year convention. Um, and that's like really like the difference between 2 weeks. Um, you wouldn't really see that big of a difference if you were going to use the nearest fraction of either anyways. But depending on the kind of depreciation convention you like to use, like for example, the nearest full month, half of that year, like, and like it's kind of hard because like you might have to like learn like, oh, there's like certain months that have like certain number of days. So like when is a half a year, half of a month? You know, is July 15th half of the month? Or is July 16th half of the month? The first half. You know, is it a full month or not? Right. So like, you know, will it be like 5 months of depreciation or 6 months of depreciation? You know, if you want to say like, oh, you can do that, you can do the calculations for that. Um, using the full month, using the nearest full month. So like, if it was placed in service on April 15th or April 5th, then the nearest full month would be January, February, March, So it'll only be 3 months, although technically it's been 5 months after the start of April. But then the full months are only like 3 months. But if it was like April 29th, then you would say like, oh, that'll be 4 months, the nearest month, 4 month convention. Right? The half year convention, um, although it's not a full half month, like April 5th, it's not a full half month, you would still say like, it's, is it close to half a month? Because you can't say like there's no depreciation for that year. So like you would say like, oh yeah, it's like half a year. Um, Even though it's only April 5th. As well as like June 15th, you would say like, oh, that's half a year, even though it's 2 weeks after the start of that half a month. But then like using the nearest fraction of the year, it's like if there's 30 days in a month, you know, um, it's 3 out of 3 1/3 um, months. Those are like the conventions when it comes to depreciation. That's like a really important thing to know. If you guys want to know more about these conventions and like to calculate like exactly in regards to like whether or not a full year of depreciation or a half a year of depreciation or like the nearest fraction of the year or the nearest full month should be used. But when it comes to the partial year depreciation, really only sum of years is going to have that prorate. Um, as well as there's like certain nuances. For example, like double decline depreciation is going to like the double decline depreciation and composite group depreciation is going to have the original cost multiplied by depreciable rate. But the thing about double declining is that it's not fixed, as in like they are calculating the depreciation annually, and then that is a fixed rate, or a fixed amount that doesn't change year after year, doesn't get recalculated, even though the book value has changed because of depreciation. With double declining, the depreciable cost will be deducted from the book value, and then the annual depreciation will be recalculated based off of the new book value. So like those are the things you just have to like really know about depreciation. Um, and like one thing about composite and group depreciation is a composite. Well, group depreciation is like assets that are really really similar. Like for example, their useful life is not that different because they're pretty much the same items. But then like for composite, you can sort of like group together more items that are like very different from each other, that have very different lives, like very different useful lives. Um, but that's pretty much it for depreciation. Obviously, remember how to calculate composite useful life and composite depreciation rate. With composite depreciation rate, total depreciation divided by the total cost. Composite life is total depreciation cost divided by the annual depreciation. So like when calculating composite or like the group, pretty much the only difference between composite and group is that the group will have items that are like very similar. But then the way you calculate for composite and group is the same. So like the thing about composite and group is that they'll use straight line depreciation method. So like you would have to calculate the straight line depreciation for all of the items in that group, all the items in the composite. And then you can get, for example, using straight line, and then you can get the annual depreciation for all of those items. You add it all together. And then you divide it by the original cost. And then that's how you get the depreciation rate. But and then for the total depreciation for composite life, like as in like the useful life of that composite or that group, you would get the total depreciation, the total depreciable cost. So then to calculate that, you would add all the original costs and the salvage values of all of those group, all the items in the group and all the items in the composite, and then divide that by the total annual depreciation. So that's pretty much all you guys really need to know about depreciation. Of course, like being able to calculate straight line units of activity, double declining. But that's pretty much it for depreciation.